We're back on the SportsMax zone and we're still talking football. Brazil and Portugal joined France as the only teams already qualified for the last 16 of the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. Brazil secured their place on Monday with a hard-fought 1-0 victory over Switzerland at the Stadium 974 in Ras Abu Aboud. Casemiro scored the all-important goal for Brazil in the 83rd minute after an earlier strike by Vinicius Jr. was ruled offside. Bruno Fernandes scored his first goal of the tournament and added another as Portugal beat Uruguay by 2-0. Here are the full results from today's matches in the World Cup. Cameroon in a 6-goal thriller with Serbia. Brazil 1-0 over Switzerland. South Korea beaten 2-3 by Ghana. And Portugal 2-0 over Uruguay. The Group G table, Group C table looks like this. Brazil on top with 6 points. They have already booked their round of 16 spot. Switzerland in second on 3 points. Cameroon and Serbia bottom of the table on 1 point each. That's the Group C table. That's Group G. Group H has Portugal in front courtesy of their win earlier today. Ghana in second on 3 points. South Korea and Uruguay joint bottom of the table on 1 point, with Uruguay having an inferior goal difference, so they're fourth at the moment behind the South Koreans. Now Trinidad and Tobago's 2006 World Cup defender Brent Sancho joins us now to look back at the big storylines of today. Of course, Brent competed at the 2006 World Cup finals for TNT. They played 3 games against England, Paraguay and Sweden. Yeah, and I'm sure that as Brent looks on to the World Cup now, he remembers those days in Germany at the World Cup. But Brent, you're here as an analyst now. I know you're a Brazil fan, so let me start there. Switzerland, defensively well organized, so it took some time for the Brazilians to break them down today. But everything about the Brazil performance today showing you their depth and their quality as a team that are rightly labeled favourites for the World Cup title.
Well, Lance, good night to you and Brian, of course, to all your viewers. Just before I start, it'd be remiss of me not to mention in the segment you had before that anyone who uses schoolboy football as a test for national team selection is out of the park. They probably don't understand what this football is about. You don't even high school football has no way close to be able to judge whether or not a talent should play for the national team. Yes. But I'll put that to the side. We go back to Brazil. No, look, I think a lot of people felt that without Neymar, of course, not playing today, that Brazil will be impacted. It's been, of course, highly notable that this Brazil team has found a way to not be so dependent on Neymar. And what we saw today was a team that not only had depth, but played with confidence, played with a swag. And if you look at, of course, some of the statistics coming out of the game, one in particular, where there was no shots on target at the halfway stage from Switzerland, tells you that the kind of course, dominance that Brazil has. And I've said this from the start of this World Cup, Lance and Mariah, it's Brazil's World Cup to lose. They are easily the most in-depth, the team with the most depth. And of course, the team with the best balance throughout 1 to 11.
Yeah, good point you made there, Brent, about the overall strength of the Brazil team. Because when people talk about Brazil, they more focus on the offensive potency of the Brazil team. But this team doesn't give up goals very much. And the stats, as you just mentioned, hardly giving up even shots on target. So this is a well-rounded Brazil team. Pretty much unlike a lot of the Brazil teams that we saw 30 and 40 years ago, where they didn't care too much about defense because they just felt if you scored 3, they'd score 4.
Yeah, and what you also have to throw into that mix, Lance, is the fact that they're still as potent as the Brazil teams of the past, which makes this team very, very special. And of course, when you look in the goalkeeping department, it's exceptional as it relates to the type of goalkeepers they have. And you look at the way that they play, they still throw several numbers forward or more advance of the ball, but they're still able to, of course, hold teams to 0 shots on target or 0 shots on goal for an entire half of football. That suggests to me that they are so well organized and so well oiled that they are extremely difficult to break down.
Yeah, a quick comment on Casemiro's moment of brilliance today to get that goal.
You know, there was a lot of conversation, Mariah, going into this game about his role and how important it is defensively, because we were just talking about Brazil and how well they've played defensively. And Casemiro is, of course, one of the major cogs in that wheel for them to play that way. But he also comes up with that sort of strike. That is an absolutely world-class strike, what he was able to do today. And it's not the first time we've seen him do it. He does pop up with 1 or 2 goals. How important is he now for this Brazil team? I remember in the last World Cup, Mariah, when he went missing against Belgium, and that was a big miss for Brazil. You would hope he can stay fit throughout this tournament, because I would argue that he's probably the most important player for Brazil.
Yeah, speaking about important players today, Portugal 2-0 over Uruguay. Bruno Fernandes coming up trumps for his country.
Yeah, Bruno Fernandes coming out trumps. Portugal, again, another team with a lot of depth. Of course, I thought they labored a bit against Uruguay. It was a bit funny to watch the approach that Uruguay took to this game. It looked like they were trying to play for a draw, which was a bit strange for Uruguay. They still have some decent attacking options, albeit on the other side of the footballing hill. Of course, that's Cavani and Suarez. And they look a bit toothless up front, Uruguay that is. But Portugal, I thought with the depth, the movement, again, another team with very good balance, very good defensively. They did very well, but still the dominance that you would expect from a team like Portugal wasn't there. I think they're a team that's slowly moving up in the gears, and if they continue to play and improve in increments that they're doing right now, they would be a team to reckon with come the knockout stages.
Yeah, well, of course, you know, we spoke at the top based on the groupings and the teams that are through the matches that we've just discussed. Portugal confirming their spot now, but Ghana, South Korea, closest to them in the points table. How do you see those remaining matches matching up for the teams to get into the round of 16?
Yeah, I think it'll be very, very tight, Lance, because when you look at it now, yes, the table suggests that Ghana is in the position to move in, but I think that final game that they have is going to be a humdinger, and it's going to certainly decide which way. I just think that Portugal is not the type of team, of course, to take their foot off the pedal. So I do expect them still to of course, produce quite a decent team. But I think South Korea is the one that you look at there, Lance. You just circle them and think, you know, how did they end up in this position? Because I thought after the first good result that they had, they would have been well on their way to beat Ghana in advance. But it's all to play for. And I just feel, in my humblest of opinion, that, of course, that Ghana-Uruguay game will decide which team advances. Yeah,
well, Brazil's safe in Group G at the moment. Switzerland and Cameroon, the teams battling to join them. Cameroon in a humdinger this morning in the 6-goal game with Serbia, leading and then having to come from behind. How good is this Cameroon team, and can they get in ahead of Switzerland?
I think they're very unpredictable. What we saw today is the different shades of Cameroon, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Of course, the first half being the ugly, and from what we saw, they have to be a lot more consistent. You know, I think we were talking about it in the last World Cup wrap-up, and we talked about African teams and of course finding their true potentials. We've been talking for years about possibly an African team going on to win a World Cup, but because of these little pockets of deficiencies, lapse in concentration, and of course flutter in play, it has always cost them. And we saw that today for Cameroon. They played horribly in the first half, came back in the second, and you just don't know what you would get in the second half. In the game that they have to play, sorry.
Yeah, so yeah, steadiness definitely lacking there. Brent, don't leave us. We're going to go to a commercial break. We'll be back shortly to continue this World Cup discussion. Back in a moment.